It's time for AggroChat, the official podcast of the Tales of the Aggronaut blog and stalwart gaming community, where we talk about stuff and things, and the stuff about the things, and sometimes gaming. I'm Belghast, and let's start the show. Hey folks, it's that time again. Time for another episode of AggroChat. This is episode 509. Tonight I'm joined by Ammo.
Hello.
Ashgar.
Hello.
Grace.
Hello.
Kodra.
I'm going to make it through this year if it kills me.
And Thalen.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are big feels.
I may have been. We may be listening to a lot of mountain goats this week.
I know it's unhealthy, but I've largely just been trying to avoid most of the world this week.
I don't think that's unhealthy.
I don't, yeah.
I think that's wise.
Ration your attention and your ability to engage with all of the stuff, because, boy.
Yeah, there's definitely we are in an attention economy, and attention is the most important thing. And I am extremely disadvantaged in this attention economy, as I am attention deficit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I will maybe pay attention more once the dust settles, but for right now, I'm just kind of keeping my head down.
Pay attention to. I'm excited for this. I get to pay attention to my friends.
It's true.
Yeah.
And talk about other things to pay attention to. It's exciting. I like this. We do this podcast for us, not for you, the listener.
This is a truthful statement. Like, it stopped being a thing that we actually attempted to attract viewers.
Yeah.
For a very long time ago.
Yes, back in 2014.
But if you're listening, thank you, and cool.
Why? But we appreciate you, but
Glad you're here.
We're so glad you're here.
Yeah. So topic that got bumped from last week is Rusty's retirement, which I believe is what if Stardew Valley were a like AFK game?
Pretty much. I love a good cozy idle game. Not always convinced they are actual games, but this one definitely is. This might be the most interesting idle game that I have played. It's what if Stardew Valley, but instead of you having to actually do everything on your farm, you just have a lot of cute robots and they do all of the things for you. It's just surprisingly compelling for not actually having anything to do. You are managing the farm of Rusty the robot and trying to get everything into a smoothly running automated state so that Rusty can mostly just rest. But similar to other farming games, there's just like a ton of different crops and things, but there's just like a surprising amount of depth for an idle game. So in addition to all of the crops, you have all of the robots that will automate things for you. So they'll water the crops and harvest them, process them into biofuel to run more robots. So like that's all cool. But then there's also a host of other friends you can invite to come live on your farm and convey various other bonuses. So there's one that will upgrade your robots for you so that they'll work harder and faster. There's a guy who will come in every once in a while and sell you basically microchips to upgrade your crops. So you can sort of customize, like, do I want this crop to grow faster? Do I want it to produce more money or more biofuel? or just, the crops will last a certain amount of number of repeats before they have to be replanted, so you can increase that. There's, a friend that comes to your farm, and then you can also raise animals and collect their poop and use it as fertilizer on the rest of the farm. Um, and I'm trying to. Oh, and then there's another that will let you keep bees, so you can have little berry bushes and bees and butterflies, and it's incredibly charming. And the other thing that's sort of fun about it is that it's designed to run in a little strip either at the bottom of your window or along the side of your window. And so, which is like just perfect for an idle game. So it can just always be there, just sort of zoomed out on the bottom of your screen, and you can watch the little robots do their thing and still have plenty of real estate to have your other windows open and do whatever else you're doing on your computer. So I know it's really charming, surprisingly engaging for a game that doesn't have that much actual gameplay. And there's lots of different layouts for the farm that are challenging in different ways. So even though I sort of quote unquote cleared the game the first time through, there's maps with different layouts that make it harder to sort of organize your farm, or there's a desert that means that you need your robots to water the plants more often or they'll die. Things like that actually add some extra replayability to it also, which I appreciate. So um, yeah, I kind of got this on a whim because it looked cute, but it's probably the most enjoyable idle game that I have ever played. So highly recommend if you like that kind of thing.
One of the things I think of with farming games is that there is already like a pretty significant like management component, deciding what to farm and when. And it feels like even if this cuts out the quote unquote gameplay, it still keeps most, if not all of that.
Yeah, I mean, you're managing the layout of your fields. There's no seasons necessarily for your
Okay.
crops, but you're sort of stepping your way through the various tiers of crops to unlock more crops. In idle game fashion, you sort of have to harvest a certain number of each kind before the next one will unlock. So there's that aspect, and you do have to plant the crops. There's like one friend you can invite to the farm that will plant them for you, but only when the field goes completely fallow. So there's a little bit of keeping an eye on things and replanting the crops, and sort of gauging like, okay, I have enough of these that it's going to unlock the next one, so I can plant something else in this field for a while, and that kind of thing. But yeah, it's really cute and surprisingly fun.
When I heard Rusty's retirement, like idle game farmer, I kind of assumed it was like Stardew Valley-esque. You've retired and inherited a farm, not you're trying to get a robot to retire.
I mean, I think the robot is like, maybe this is his retirement, is taking care of this farm, but also through your actions, you're basically making the farm nicer and making him have to work less. And he can go and sit on a bench and just watch the other robots work for him. It's very cute.
So Tuesday was the release of Diablo IV Season 7, Season of Witchcraft. And
Witchtide.
Which is essentially a functional reprint of the Season of Blood, because the Witchtide is up in 4 zones, and they got smart and they staggered them this time so that basically, like, you've got 45, or I think it's like 40 minutes, 45 minutes, something like that per zone, but they rotate so that at any given time there'll be like one that's just about to end and then one that's just starting. so you can rotate between them and farm stupid amounts of whispers from the Tree of Whispers, which basically this event is centered around, which means just like lots of caches full of loot. The encounters are fun from the little event. The Witch Tide event, like there's lots of things to fight. So I guess taking a step back, the Tree of Whispers is this NPC, for lack of a better term, in Diablo 4, where basically like people will ask favors from the Tree of Whispers, and as a result, the Tree of Whispers gets your head from that point forward. So it's a tree with a bunch of heads hanging on it, and the heads all talk, but they're essentially representing this one entity called the Tree of Whispers, but apparently heads can escape.
Well, so the point is, you don't lose your head immediately, right? You have a question, only the tree can answer it, and you pledge your head to the tree. So when you die, someone will collect your head, and it will live on the tree forever.
Right.
But
So it's a creepy magic bulletin board.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Is this representing the fig tree Jesus curses? Is that what this tree is supposed to represent in this extremely Christian allegory?
I do not believe I am religious enough to understand your metaphor.
I hope not. It's just a creepy tree. This was not as excessively Christian allegory as some other parts of this game.
Honestly, yeah, but the way you talk about it sounds more Bradbury-esque.
This has been in since like the core game. Like you interact with the tree during the core game, and our head as the NPC or the player character is probably going to end up on the tree at some point.
Hooray!
But like so part of the base game is like you do these events, quote unquote, on behalf of the tree, and sometimes you're collecting heads for the tree. But this event, centers around like these witch doctors that are basically devoted to protecting the tree, and some shenanigans happens and heads go missing, and then they reclaim other bodies to so they can move around. So you have these really creepy undead things that kind of have like these stolen heads grafted to them.
They're like Jack-in-the-Box heads, sort of, with tree roots.
Yeah, it's really kind of like, it's cool looking, but it's kind of messed up. So yeah, these I don't even remember what the thing, like head hunts, I think is technically the name of them. I call them witch tides because anything that follows the Helltide formula is a something tide. I call the vampire ones blood tides. So
see, when I hear witch tide, I want this to be about surfing witches. Any indie developers out there, I offer this idea for free. I relinquish all claim to it. Make this game.
Yeah, so like the seasonal event is great. You can especially, you can level with this from the moment it unlocks, which I think is after you complete the tutorial, you can start doing the seasonal content.
I am not so sure about that.
I don't think that's true.
I think you may have to get to the tree in the first place, because I know someone who is going through the game for the first time, and they have not yet unlocked the ability to do the witch tide. So
okay, so they probably have to get to Ammosart then,
I think,
which is third act of the game or fourth act. I don't remember a sequence.
Yeah, I'm keeping an eye on it to see when it unlocks, but it certainly did not unlock when they first got to Kyovashad, so I was a little disappointed.
Yeah, I just got to Kyovashad last night, and it did not unlock there.
Okay. Like, one of the claims to fame with Diablo 4 is that once you've done the campaign once, you can just not ever do it again. So, like, seasons like this are great because they're a super fun leveling mechanic.
On top of that, this one is also really generous with the loot. I hadn't done much Helltide this season, but just did a little bit last night and this morning. And it's a night and day difference, the amount of loot that just rains down on you in the Witch Tide compared to the Helltide.
Does this game manage to make loot on the ground matter?
I mean, I will pick
Sort
up
of.
legendaries on the ground to see what they are, and I don't have to identify them. I just have to pick them up and look at them, which is nice. And you do want to collect some amount of them for the resources you need to upgrade your gear, regardless if what has dropped on the ground is any good.
Yeah, so basically you can overwrite the legendary aspects of any item to any other item. So like when you salvage a legendary, you keep the special sauce that made that legendary, unique. And it goes into this crafting book kind of thing. And then at any point you can take any other legendary that maybe has better stats and overwrite the legendary portion of that item. And there's like a wide number of roles for all these legendaries, but like every time you salvage one, you basically collect the best version that you just had. So over the course of a season, you're upgrading the versions you can make. I don't know if that makes any sense at all. But like, say you have something that's got a range of like 25 to 50, and you salvage one that's 28. Well, from that point on, you can automatically make 28% versions of that legendary. And then if you find a 41, your template that you can overwrite onto items is now 40.
It also helps for picking up loot off the ground that you can pretty easily enchant items. So if you find something that has, a couple good stats on it, one crappy one, you can go enchant it and re-roll it until you're happy with it.
I mean, pending you do this late in the game, because early on in the game, you'll absolutely run yourself out of gold by doing this thing. Because I did that pretty early on. I just ran out of gold trying to fix an item. But I don't know, like there's honestly a lot of good things to do during a season. And like the challenge that we've had with the Path of games is they are not terribly great with other people.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're mostly a solo experience, and for the most part, this is one of those games that is just like universally good with other people. So we were doing an event last night that is, like you can only respawn 6 times during the event. And then we learned, if a player resurrects you, it doesn't count against your respawn timers.
Now, we're not 100% sure if that's true at any time, but this event has, stages, spawn phases, and a break in between. And during the break, if I died and Bel res me, it did not count against our number of reses, which is good because I was way underpowered and I died a lot.
This is one of the few times where I've actually hard carried Grace, and it's always been the other way around.
Yeah, I'm a little behind this season. It's kind of nice to be carried for once.
But yeah, like it's a game where you get your own copy of loot. So there's a bunch of bosses and stuff that you can summon. So it's really beneficial to like pool your summons so that you can just chain run a bunch of the same boss over and over and over and over, because it's basically like an altar type object in the map, and if you click on it and consume the resources, you just get an instant boss. So you can zone into that area and kill it as many times as you want, or until you run out of inventory space. That's the real metric. Yeah.
But it's also really easy to teleport back to town, sell your stuff, and teleport right back. We haven't quite got to that point this season, so we just haven't been max level enough to accumulate quite that many of the summoning doodads, but Yeah, it's really quick and easy to do that, and it's really fun to just grab somebody and run through all of the bosses, see what drops.
Yeah, and I think you can pretty freely trade whatever.
Yeah, because we've done that in the past. I think, and the other nice thing is that the sort of highest level chase gear can start dropping at Torment 1 from those bosses, and so yes, your chances of getting it go up slightly the higher Torment you are, but if you want to just run around and kill stuff with a friend for a while, you can do it on Torment 1 and you might get really lucky.
Yeah. Basically, every single item in the game can drop on the first Torment level. Like, you have to get to Torment 1, but, once you've gotten to Torment 1, which is pretty easy to get to, you're basically Torment 1 through 4 have all the same drops. It just increases the drop rates, like Grace said. It's been kind of wild how rare the head drops are during this season. So like that's like the special crafting currency from doing some of these events is like collecting heads to return to the tree. And I think by default you have like a 5% drop rate of heads on Torment 1, and it improves slightly, but not by a ton. And the little potion that you take makes it improve slightly, but still, like it seems to take a while before you could really start getting the heads to drop.
Yeah, although I realized also, because I'm still behind a bit, that I still haven't gotten enough of the other jewel crafting materials to even use the head that I've gotten so far. So maybe that's okay. But what I haven't seen yet at all. So part of the mechanic for the season is also that you can get these witchy powers to upgrade your character, which is great. They're really fun, and one of them is a murder frog, and so I'm in love with it. But they're they're really handy. They made leveling really easy. But some of them can only be found in nightmare dungeons on Torment 1 or better.
Yeah.
And I've been running Torment 1 nightmare dungeons for a few days, and I have not yet seen one.
Yeah, I haven't either. I ran through a bunch this afternoon trying to see, because like one of the seasonal journey achievements is to do one of those, and I've not found one at all.
I'm hoping once I can bump up the torment level, maybe they'll have a better chance. Because you can, I think using the potion also will increase your chances of finding them, but I would rather save those for the actual headhunts.
Yeah, like the potions don't drop that often. I don't have a ton of them.
Now, I wish they were a little bit more generous with those.
Or craftable. Like, I have plenty of bundled herbs or whatever to craft potions. Let me craft some of the seasonal potions.
But yeah, so there's lots of stuff to the season mechanic, because there's also sort of a variant of dungeons that's specifically I forget what they call them, but
root holds.
Root holds, that's it. So it's sort of like a nightmare dungeon. It's a cross between a nightmare dungeon and the Infernal Horde event, where as you go through the dungeon, you get to make some choices about what's going to be in the next area, and you can, make some trade-offs in order to make the loot more profitable or have more opportunities for loot. And that's been really fun.
Yeah, I think it's a better system than the Nightmare or the Infernal Hordes is, like, overall. I'd like to see them incorporate some of that stuff into Infernal Hordes, because, like, right now, Infernal Hordes has a couple of things that are really great, and then everything else is kind of awful.
Yeah, it is too frequent that you go into the Infernal Hordes and all of your choices just kind of feel meh. And I have not felt that way about my choices in the root holds. There always seems like there's something that's at least pretty useful, even if it's just you have one more opportunity for some loot.
Right. Kind of the weird thing, though, and like I talked about this on my blog, is this is easily the best season that Diablo 4 has ever had, but also seems to be struggling in, at very least, the streamer attention. And folks that have essentially made their career on the backs of Diablo 4 are not even playing it right now.
Yeah, I was
Which
a
is
little
wild.
surprised by that because it's, PoE 2 has been out for a little bit now, and there's, I don't know, there's nothing too new there right this second, but D4 is in a really good place. It's really fun. And like I get that it doesn't take that long to get through the season and kind of see everything there is to see in a Diablo season, but yeah, it's still been a little surprising that people are kind of just ignoring it completely.
And I think the bigger thing is, like, for this season is it seems like all the classes are in pretty good state. Because, like, when you're roaming around the world, you see a pretty wide representation of different classes.
And I mean, I'll be honest, I was shocked because this is Blizzard that, I decided I was going to try to play as Spiritborn again. And I was pretty sure after last season that they were going to nerf the ever-living heck out of them. And somehow they didn't. They kind of cleaned up their messes, and it's not as outrageous as it was last season, but it's still perfectly functional. I fully expected them to just nerf it into the ground, but they actually showed some restraint, and it's still pretty fun.
Well,
that's good.
I'm playing a Necromancer, and I kind of refuse to play the power versions of the Necromancer, which is essentially not using any pets, because, like, why would you play a Necromancer if you don't want to use pets? And like I'm doing Torment 3 with the maximum being Torment 4, but really I don't even have any of the uniques that the build that I'm going for requires, and I'm doing fine. So, like, that's a kind of a tells me that the game is in pretty decent state if you can limp through to Torment 3 without actually finding any of the gear that you're wanting for a build.
I have to imagine that maybe streamers are not paying as much attention because, like, maybe this game is not balanced to what a good streaming game is. Like, I wonder if there is some tension between a game is good for a casual player and a game is good as something a streamer would stream for their audience.
And that's probably the case. Like, Rax leveled a character all the way through to the end game in like 2 hours. He was specifically trying to do a speed run, and I think that was the last character he played before he went back to PoE 2. And at that point, I think he had leveled 4 characters at that point in the 2 days that the league was open. So I don't know, like, it may just be too easy for some of the streamers, but it does surprise me because, like, there's a lot of streamers that have effectively built their brand on Diablo 4, and now they've all converted to PoE.
Most of them built it before Diablo 4 existed, right?
Yeah.
A lot of them built it on Diablo 3, or in one particular case, Diablo Immortal.
Yeah. I don't know.
And then on not liking Diablo, their brand became not liking Diablo 4.
Yeah. Like, it's not a terribly deep game. It's only really going to be a couple of weeks worth of enjoyment, but also I feel like that's fine.
Well, I was actually going to comment on that. I just started playing Diablo 4 last night.
Okay.
I started a druid because,
Sure.
And I'm trying to understand basically how I think builds work in this game, how the tree works. This class only seems to have 5 builds.
That's kind of all builds. All classes are that way. It's real simple.
Yeah, it's not a deep game, but it is a polished, fun game. And
It is polished. Like the things like the cinematics are like this game has more budget than any other ARPG I've played. Probably all of them put together, quite frankly. Like Path of Exile 2 is the only other game that's even like remotely close. And even then it's got a long way to go.
Like it's definitely got the Blizzard polish.
I started downloading it. It is 120 gigabytes.
I'm not playing on a 4K monitor, so I didn't take the high res texture pack.
Is that a thing I could have opted out of?
Yeah,
Yes.
It was a check mark on one of the screens.
Okay.
But yeah, that's a thing. This is also the most aggressive I think I've seen a full price game be about microtransactions.
Yes, that is a thing.
Yeah, but they're all pointless. And the
They're
shop is
entirely
awful.
cosmetic. The shop is terrible. It rotates every 24 hours.
The thing that kills me about the shop is I'm forever accidentally hitting the button, and you have to wait on the stupid intro animation for it to load. It's like a
great.
tarot
It's
reader
not
pulling
great.
a card or something.
That's a
like,
problem.
Yeah, lessons were learned by them about their experience with Diablo Immortal that were maybe not good ones. Look, they had a problem. They built Diablo 3, and how they were going to make money off Diablo 3 didn't work out, so they didn't make any money off of it. They wanted to make sure they never had that problem with Diablo 4. But also,
Also, their shop is so bad that it makes me actively not want to give them money in it, even when I'm enjoying myself in the game. But I think it's okay for an ARPG to be a game that you go and you play a season for a few weeks, and then you take a break, and then you go back and you play the next season for a few weeks.
Yep.
And it lets you very easily rotate your way through the many other excellent ARPGs, right? There's a Dwarven Realms update coming later this week, and I expect to be pretty much done with this season by the time that launches, and I am great with that.
Yeah, going into a Diablo 4 season, I really want to complete the battle pass and do the season's journey and level a character all the way up.
Is this a free battle pass?
There is a free track. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good.
You get to stare at all the cosmetics you're not getting by not paying them, but also,
I don't care.
You get some free cosmetics, and you get some currency that lets you boost your leveling and in-game currency gain and a few other things across the course of the season. So it's fine.
But yeah, at this point, I am on the second to last step of the season's journey, and I've got I think one more objective to finish to move to the final thing. But that final tab is all Torment 4 stuff, so I've got to get my build to a point where I can do any of it. But also it's shockingly easy to carry people. If someone's stuck on something, it's pretty easy to help them out with something. So it's a popcorn game, and it's fun. Really, when we were playing Diablo 3, it was a good weekend, and that was about all it was.
Yeah, I mean, the tail might be a little bit longer than that, depending, but it was you knew that when a season started, you had a solid couple days of hanging out with your friends, doing something fun, murdering some demons. And I need that right now.
Yeah, it's a level of chill that none of the other ARPGs are really delivering on. Last Epoch comes pretty close, but Last Epoch still has more consequences than Diablo 4 has.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sort of nice to have a game that doesn't really care if you die. That doesn't make you feel bad or, remove your loot or screw you over in some way. It's okay, you died, pick yourself back up, dust yourself off, and try again.
Also,
I am kind of liking Grim Dawn's death penalty, which is you lost some experience, but also you can get it back if you can get back to where you died.
This game also has something I've been wanting in an ARPG forever, which is basically respec mode, where it doesn't count anything against you until you click apply, so you can fiddle with your tree freely, don't have to worry about any of the requirements, so long as the requirements work at the end. So if you want to remove stuff from the beginning of the tree, you can absolutely do that without having to worry about, that you don't have enough points for this ability or that ability yet. So long as once you're done with it, everything's good.
Yeah, you don't have to walk your build back 1 point at a time. You can just mess with things, fix them, make sure that everything works out in the end, and then click apply.
I feel like every ARPG with a skill tree that's like even the vaguest amount of complex should have a mode like that where you can just flip it into, stop validating my choices for a second.
I mean, given that D4 is probably the least complex skill tree of any modern ARPG, like if they can do it, surely some of the others with the really complex trees could let us have this.
Okay, the Battletech topic.
Yeah, so I ended up playing some Battletech this weekend. This past weekend with Tam and another friend of ours, and
tabletop or PC?
Tabletop.
Okay.
And this is the old 80s rules, and like I've always heard Battletech is a lot.
It is a lot.
It is.
I got to learn
and I
this some years
didn't
ago.
really appreciate just how much of a lot it was until I was actually in it. Because in a lot of ways, it's fairly straightforward. Like, it is hex movements. Your mechs have a certain amount of movement. And, like, turning costs of movement, moving costs of movement, but then, like, terrain modifies that. But, like, there's just, like, so much to keep track of. So, like, one of the first thing that was immediately apparent is our friend brought along these dice to keep track of how far you moved and what type of movement you had done, and those were invaluable because being able to be like, this mech ran and it displaced 6 spaces, then immediately puts on that mech, it's going to take a +2 penalty to shooting, but it gets a +2 bonus to defense.
Yep.
Because how far you move determines how hard it is to hit you, and what type of movement you did determines how inaccurate you are at shooting. And this is a 2d6 resolution style, so all of those modifiers super, super valuable. And I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with what resolving an attack in Battletech is like. But
let me see if I remember, because it's been some time.
I
do believe you have to roll to see if you hit at all.
Yep.
Then you roll to see what part you hit.
But pick a location.
Okay, but how? So
then you roll to see where on that part you hit.
Maybe it's worse. It's a little worse than that.
Okay.
Because so first off, you have when you're determining where you hit, you have 3 different tables depending on which facing you are shooting into.
Correct.
Yes, I forgot that part.
From the enemy profile. So if you're shooting at their side, their right or left profile, or their front or back arcs, those have different rolls. Those have different tables. You're still rolling 2d6, and there's a table that you look up to see, I am in the front arc. I rolled a 6 on a 2d6. That means I hit them in the right torso.
Then determine if you knocked it off enough, if you made it into structure.
So yes, then you have to see, okay, how much damage did I deal? That was on the weapon. But let's go back. Let's actually wind our way back to the actual to hit roll. So everyone has a mech pilot and they have skills. They have a gunnery and a piloting skill. By default, the gunnery skill is 4. So on a not unmodified hit roll, you need to roll a 4 or higher to hit. But if you walked, you add 1 to that. If you ran, you add 2 to that. If you jumped, you add 3 to that. If the opponent's mech displaced more than like 2 to 4 squares, they get a +1 to the. You add 1 to that. If they displaced 5 to 6, I think it's +2. 7 to 9 is +3, and it goes up from there. Then, are they in light or heavy terrain, and do they have any number of intervening terrain light or heavy terrain pieces between you and them?
Yep.
On elevations where it matters, trees are only elevation 2. Am I missing anything?
Probably.
If you have a targeting computer, you get to subtract 1. And if you're firing a pulse lit weapon, you get to subtract 2 more.
Yep.
And then you roll a 2d6 and figure out if you hit. Oh, no, I did, obviously. Ranges. Every weapon has a profile of what their range modifiers are. At short range, which is very short, you have a +0. At medium range, you have a +2, and at long range, you have a +4. At long range, you frequently should not be rolling. It's just not worth it. Then if this is a missile weapon, we have to, obviously, I shot 20 missiles at you, right? And I did hit. But really, how many of those 20 missiles hit? Well, we should probably roll on the cluster table.
Yep.
So we look at what does an LRM 20 roll 2d6 and see what the cluster result tells you how many missiles hit it. And then those missiles cluster their damage in pools based on the weapon's profile. I think an LRM is cluster 5, so it doles out all of the damage in chunks of 5 damage.
That sounds right. Yep.
And then you roll each of those as which area did you hit.
Yep.
And then if you did go to structure, now we have to roll against the critical table to see if you dealt critical damage. This is 1 attack.
Yeah, I just remember it taking 5 to 10 minutes to resolve every single attack.
Yes, it's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
Look, it was the 80s. We loved tables and we loved rolling lots and lots of dice.
Yeah, like you can basically go to any one of those games from that era, and they all kind of had this stuff going in there.
Have you ever played Rollmaster? You should check out Rollmaster.
Have you ever built a character in a Palladium game?
Rollmaster is tabletop gaming for accountants.
I understand. Like, I used to think that rolling to hit in 40K was overwrought because it had 3 steps.
Yeah, now you understand what that was in comparison to.
Now I understand what that was in comparison to. We also had the really fun one today, this week, where I was like looking at profiles and trying to list build. And I saw that one of the mechs I thought was interesting had a tag on it. And I was like, oh, that's neat. What does a tag do? Oh, it allows you to attempt to put a tag condition onto a mech. This can modify a whole host of specific ammunition. The ones that matter for like small scale battles are semi-guided missiles. What do semi-guided missiles do? Semi-guided missiles allow you to use indirect fire against tagged enemies with basically no penalty. That's really strong. Okay, how do I get semi-guided missile ammunition? Well, you just replace the ammunition in your you replace your LRM ammo with semi-guided missile LRM ammo. Okay, does that have a cost? Yes. It's a multiplier of the number of tags in your force times the BV of each ton of semi-guided ammunition you have in your entire force, which is another table lookup, and also so confusing.
Yeah.
This game, like, I think this game would be fun to play a computer game that takes care of all of that.
Yeah.
I have good news for you.
The Battletech game is pretty. I mean, it doesn't change it a lot. There's a little bit of cleanup here and there, but it's pretty close to the standard rules.
It isn't. It is not quite hex based though. It's still like we're just going to allow you to sort of move a certain amount, right?
Yeah. It's like actual distances rather than hexes. Yes.
Yeah.
But a lot of the other stuff like movement affecting your chance to hit, your chance to get hit, elevation mattering, cover mattering. All of that stuff. Heat.
We can't forget about heat.
I was going to say, you didn't mention heat anywhere in any of that.
Well, I didn't mention heat, which is something that you gain whenever you shoot a weapon, and your mech has a certain number of heat sinks on it, and those heat sinks absorb a certain amount of that. But if you take this is the funny thing. I'm used to playing Mech Warrior, whereas like routinely I'll run about 80% heat. Like that's where my sweet spot is like trying to go very hard and run hot. That is not how you should be playing Battletech, the minis game. As soon as you get any amount of heat on you, your mech starts deteriorating fast.
Yep, you want to. This is why finding a nice pond to stand in can be a good idea.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, Battletech played with the full rules is very simulationist, and it's a lot.
It does seem like this is one of those things where if it was able to be, if each attack was able to be sped up somehow, it would probably be way better. It would probably also be better. Like, I imagine it would be a lot of fun to like do campaigns type stuff where you're fighting against stuff that the lightweight stuff like armor and whatnot, support units. But like playing an actual PvP Battletech is a lot.
Yep.
I did discover we had a wonderful envisioning of exactly why the Inner Spheres mechs sometimes just have terrible design flaws with them. I was piloting a Jinner, and the Jinner has in its right torso absolutely nothing except 100 tons of machine gun ammo. Or not 100, 1 ton of machine gun ammo.
Mm-hmm.
And which means if you take any structure damage...
You took a hit to your ammo.
To your right torso on that Jinner, you took every single roll hits onto that ammo, which then does 1 times the number of shots left in it.
Oh, when your ammo cooks off, it's a bad time.
Which for some ammo would be like 6. Like AC-20, 1 ton of ammo is 6. For machine gun, it's 100. So there were not that many boxes, and it was a one-shot. Don't run a machine gun Jinner. It's a bad idea.
Yep, and this is why when Case becomes available, Case is really, really good.
Because it's not even like, I mean, alternatively, just don't run machine guns. Machine guns are kind of terrible.
It depends. Like, if you get up in something's face and just, a 2, 4, even 6 machine guns, straight into it, it's going to have a bad time.
That is still at best 18 damage.
Eh.
Like, there are plenty of weapons that have that amount of damage on just themselves.
Yeah, but with basically the machine gives you more opportunities for that one hit that matters, because you're rolling all those hits.
It's true. Really, like, the reason machine guns are even remotely decent is because there's 0 heat, but
that's the other thing. They don't generate heat.
They don't generate heat. I don't think that justifies their existence in that game, because they are also like, if you are trying to use them, you're kind of all in on using them because their range profiles are 1, 2, 3.
Oh yeah, no. If you're using machine guns, you're probably either using just them or maybe machine guns and a flamer or 2.
Which is again a problem, because then you are necessarily almost always oversynced.
Well, as long as you're giving them more heat than you're giving yourself. But no, I mean, part of the thing with like especially early Battletech is every mech has like severe weaknesses. Like that's part of why when they brought in the clans, you've got these clan mechs that are like suddenly these super amazing sleek things, and a single clan mech can take out like an entire lance of inner sphere mechs, because inner sphere mechs are kind of jank.
I feel like the clan mechs were the GM's mechs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, with BV, it doesn't really matter because it's easy to just say, yes, the clan mechs are better, but we're going to play with this BV value, and the clan mechs cost way more battle value.
Yeah, no, moving to that instead of focusing entirely on tonnage, that's a good change.
Which does mean it's easier to make some truly ridiculous mechs. Like BV allows you to fully customize a mech and have a somewhat accurate analysis of how good it is, with I think a few notable problems. I think the thing I've heard is it's basically impossible to assign a BV value to clan large pulse lasers. They're just too good.
Yeah, I can believe that.
So Ash, tell us about Sonic Frontiers.
Sonic Frontiers. Sonic Frontiers is the open world Sonic game. It is the most recent mainline Sonic game to release. Even though that is like, help me here, Kodra. It's like a year old, year and a half, something like that.
Something like that, yeah. Maybe more.
Anyway, I'm just now getting to it, as there has been
2022.
Yeah, all right. Really?
Yeah.
I know when it released,
2022, but yeah.
There were some bug issues, a lot of bug issues. People weren't very thrilled with it.
I feel like I remember the early reviews being not great.
I just remember Beach talking about it on LRR.
I frankly, I mostly heard positives about Sonic Frontiers. I don't know.
Well, Ian Flynn apparently wrote the script, so if nothing else, the story ought to be entertaining.
The story is interesting. It gave characterization to characters who haven't had any for literal decades.
Hooray!
So Amy is a character again, Knuckles is a character again, as opposed to the caricatures they've been since the last time they had character was Sonic Adventure 2, I want to say. How many years ago was that?
Yeah, mate, yeah. A lot.
I mean, Dreamcast ago?
Because Sonic Heroes was 2003, and that was when they lost all characterization entirely.
Yeah, Sonic Adventure 2 was 2001, so yeah, 20 years.
Yeah, all right. I am still fairly early. It is a very open world game, so like if that's not your thing, then this is not your game. Sonic is dumped into open world segments where you need to basically beat up enemies to get gears. You use gears to unlock cyberspace levels, basically VR levels, which are like old Sonic levels. It can be either 3D levels or 2D levels. It's normal fast-paced Sonic level, style level. And do well in those to unlock keys, and then use keys to unlock Chaos Emeralds. And when you get enough, you can go and fight a big boss, and so on and so forth. There's a very defined gameplay loop, but it's a lot of fun, actually, to control Sonic. Apparently, there is an option between, like, adventure mode control and, like, boost mode control or something like that, where they say, like, this is for people who've never played Sonic games before. Apparently, that one's bad. Apparently, don't do that. Even if you've never played a Sonic game before, don't pick that one.
Okay.
But other than that, like, I've been having a pretty good time with it. A friend has definitely gotten me back into Sonic, a franchise which I have not paid a lot of attention to the games in for some time.
I gotta be honest, the last 3D Sonic game I played was Sonic Adventures 2.
I'm not going to say that's the last good one because Generations exists.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, Sonic has been very hit or miss over the years.
And there's been great 2D Sonic games.
I mean, I heard good things about Superstars, but I haven't picked it up.
I mean, my kid has it and has enjoyed it, but it's hard to know whether that actually means it's good or not. He's not frustrated by it. So that's something.
Also, time heals some wounds. I looked up. People seem to be less down on some of the 3D Sonic games in between than they were when they came out.
Is Sonic Colors still the worst Sonic game?
Some people really love Sonic Colors.
Really?
Yeah, people like that one when it came out.
Okay.
People like it less now, actually. Getting a lot of, this game was overhyped when it came out. But I did pick up Unleashed, a game that I'm told exactly half of is good.
Uh-oh.
Oh, dear.
Is it the first
Oh, that's
half?
the Sonic the Werehog.
Yeah, it's a Sonic the Werehog game.
Ah,
I am told it has the best 3D Sonic levels in the series. And then also the Werehog levels exist. Yeah, time has definitely made people take a closer look at some of the older Sonic games. For better and worse. Like, maybe not all the levels in Sonic Mania are as good as the levels that they were imitating.
Right.
I
still think their Chemical Plant Zone Act 2 is one of the best levels in gaming, though.
I do really appreciate like what I watched of Sonic Frontiers, because it did make Sonic going fast seem relevant when you were crossing this massive open world.
Oh yeah, it's real fun to actually travel across the world because you're Sonic.
Because you're Sonic, you go fast. It is interesting the difference between also just going fast, but also going fast nimbly, and I don't know if this game will have that feel.
I mean, it's showing me how out of practice I am.
That's fair.
Because there are a few of the Sonic levels, like the virtual levels, whatever they call them, cyberspace levels. One of the objectives is always to get an S rank time.
Uh-huh.
On some of these, this is not that hard. On some of these, this is extremely difficult. Apparently, if the internet is to be believed, the second one you're asked to do is one of the hardest ones in the entire game. You don't need to S rank levels. That's not a thing you need to do. But you do need to get some amount of objectives complete, and S ranking a level is one of them. But yeah, figuring out like, hey, do I need to take this spring off that I just passed? Oh, too late. Maybe get that on the next run through. They did make it very easy to restart these levels at some point, though.
How did the boss fights feel?
Boss fights were really good. You fight them as Supersonic. So they're mostly about doing damage efficiently rather than surviving. But damage, as usual, knocks you back quite a lot. So you do still need to care about not getting hit all the time. I don't know. I'm really enjoying it, even though it is, I don't know. It is, open worlds are not usually my thing. I usually get bored of them fairly quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the movement here is what's saving it.
Yeah, I would imagine that would be the case. Like, if it is fun to move around and exist in the world, then like going exploring is, and like marking off things is just more new things to move towards.
Yeah.
So are you dealing with Dr. Eggman in this one?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, not really. You are dealing with this mysterious entity that is totally not working with Dr. Eggman, and I have no idea why anyone would say that.
Got it. Is this the Sonic where Sonic also exists with like in the world of humans?
I have not seen any suggestion that humans exist.
Other than Dr. Eggman, who is clearly not a human.
Look, he's his own thing.
Sonic 06, the one just called Sonic the Hedgehog, is the big one where people talk about that.
This is not a Sonic game where we should be expecting Gun to show up.
I did also see the Sonic movie fairly recently.
Also saw it recently. Took my kid to see it.
How are those?
The first one's better than the second one. I haven't seen the third.
Okay.
We went and saw the third one. It was entertaining, particularly for a 7-year-old. I feel like it could have been about 20 minutes shorter, and every one of those minutes would have been a minute of Eggman. Like Jim Carrey rubber facing around, and it like it was a bit much. Like in general, I would have edited the movie a bit differently. Is what it really comes down to. I would have removed a lot of Eggman, and I would have maybe made a couple of transitions a little less abrupt. Like there were a couple of places where camera angle changed, and I was like, did a character just teleport? But yeah, it was fun enough. But it's definitely aimed at the kids.
But also, yes, they make fun of Gun.
Gun has a very big role in the third movie, unsurprisingly.
I can imagine.
Given that, it's Shadow. They don't come off looking real great.
They don't look real great in either of the first two. So by the time you get to the Shadow movie, I'd imagine they look even worse. Yeah, they make fun of how nonsense the acronym is in the very first movie.
Good. I assumed that they had probably already taken care of that because they didn't bring it up in the third one. It's like, yep, Gun, this is just a thing that exists. Okay, I mean,
what is the
Sonic.
Story of Sonic games now?
I think it depends on the game. Like there isn't a single
Dr.
chronology.
Eggman is doing something dumb. Stop him.
Yes.
Okay. And why do we know why Dr. Eggman is doing dumb stuff?
Currently, no.
Okay.
That's what Eggman does.
Like, what game are you asking about here?
Well, I'm obviously asking about, like, for me, the Sonic story is going to be the Freedom Fighters, and it's like, yeah,
It has never been the Sonic story in the games.
I realize that's never been the Sonic story in games, but it's at least kind of cohesive.
Yeah, but we're not allowed to talk about them anymore.
We cannot, for legal reasons, we cannot acknowledge that there are any echidnas other than Knuckles. Knuckles is legally the last echidna.
We can acknowledge Takala, but we can't show her.
Yes. Also, Sonic has no family.
But I guess that's like, it's like there was a theme to that story that they were going for. And I'm like, what is even the theme of a Sonic story?
Almost always it is Eggman is doing something dumb.
Involving Chaos Emeralds.
Usually involving Chaos Emeralds or the Master Emerald or some other large gemstone.
Got it.
If Knuckles is in the game, he's tricking Knuckles into doing his bidding.
That is Knuckles' role.
That has been less true since Sonic Adventure.
Yeah.
But it was true for Knuckles' introduction in Sonic 3 and also Sonic Adventure. So it became a bit of a thing.
We need to get Knuckles, DDD, and Proto Man to a support group.
I mean, these days Knuckles' role is mostly be slightly dense and want to punch things.
This is very funny because Knuckles was always like the self-serious, like.
Oh yeah, no, it's
not like he was way more serious than Sonic in the comics.
Yeah, no, that's the only place he ever got that characterization. His role in the games is either useful tool for Eggman, who like realizes way too late the dumb that he's done, or just guy who likes to punch.
He is like Sonic Adventure 2 is a game where he actually has character.
Yeah,
and an actual role. Although his continued failing to protect his one job, protect the Master Emerald, is definitely a thing.
He is really bad at that job.
Because Sonic Adventure 2 kicks off with Ruse stealing the Master Emerald and it breaking again.
He is the guardian of the Master Emerald in the Sonic movies.
Yes, he is. He's bad at defending it there too.
Is that also what is keeping the floating island floating?
Yes, it's why it's fallen into the sea when it started Sonic 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I don't know. I'm partial to Sonic Boom Knuckles, who's just dumb and skips leg day. But Sonic Boom is its own weird thing.
It did get its own game, but yeah.
I get the impression the game is not quite as Looney Tunes as the show.
What?
Sonic Boom.
The
Sonic Boom show is just ludicrous. Like, in half the episodes, Eggman's plan is... Like, in one episode, the entire, like, conflict is Eggman and Amy discover that they enjoy playing the same collectible puppy figurine game. But Eggman hates to lose.
Well.
Like, that's the sort of story that happens in the Sonic Boom cartoon.
So...
Except for the 2 episodes that Shadow shows up in. When Shadow shows up, things get serious.
The trope talk.
He's like the witch.
The trope talk this week from Overly Sarcastic Productions was on the Dreaded and the way to like establish a villain's like imposing figure. And I feel like the fact that no one has ever actually dreaded Robotnik is kind of a problem with the story.
Robotnik does some messed up stuff sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he is occasionally allowed to actually get his way, and it's always really bad when he does. But he's never been dreaded because he's the boss at the end of every game, end of every level.
Yep. Like, the entire game is about beating him up over and over and over.
I'm just saying he could use some henchmen.
That aren't named Knuckles?
Yes.
I mean, Orbot's pretty smart.
Like, do they not bring up Mecha Sonic anymore?
Metal Sonic? Very rarely.
Yeah. Metal Sonic is still a thing.
You wouldn't know it, though.
Yeah. They did use him in a couple episodes of Sonic Boom. So, like, they remember he exists.
I know he is significantly more important in the comics, which I have not read.
Oh, which comics?
The IDW comics, the current comics.
Okay. I was about to say, in the Ken Penders one, he was literally just Sonic roboticized.
No, he's just a robot designed after Sonic these days.
which is what he was originally.
Also, maybe you should go watch Sonic 3. And make sure you stay through the credits. All the credits. Just saying.
I mean, at the end of Sonic 2, they go, hey, it's Shadow.
Mm-hmm. Yep, does seem like they might have done that again at the end of Sonic 3. With, maybe another character and maybe another villain. Could be.
That's probably a show. Any final thoughts or short topics anybody has?
How does ambient light in Diablo 4 work?
Differently, depending on whether you think the game should look like inky black darkness or whether you should be able to see things.
I'm just noticing that my shadow is always directly behind me, so wherever I'm facing must be where the sun is, and that makes me ask questions about the cosmology.
Like, don't ask questions about the cosmology of Diablo games.
But
even though that's what this game is literally about, that's not a question you should be asking.
If you're asking that question, we failed.
I'm going to take this story extremely seriously. My life's motto is live and don't learn.
The storytelling in Diablo 4 is incredibly good for the genre. The actual story being told, I'm not sure of yet, but it was weird to hear just walk up and hear Sid. That was surreal. FF16's Sid, for anyone wondering.
Nice.
I'm on book 3 of the Newsflesh series, and I am really wishing I had read this before now. It was really good so far.
It makes me happy that you're finally reading it, although it reads differently on the other side of a global pandemic.
Yes, it does. And it maybe says some bad lessons. But also, the second book was way better than the first book and made me appreciate a character that I didn't really care for in the first book. So, working as intended. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed the show, and we will see you again next week. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
See you.
Good night.